I'm back. Welcome. It's Happy New Year. It's been a great couple of weeks off. Welcome to the Fiat Ministry Show, episode 90. And I can't believe we're almost to 100 episodes. I have a great guest. He was just recently over in Rome, which is also very awesome to think about having that intimate faith and journey over there. I just want to let everybody know, please like, share the show on our YouTube, Facebook. Also, you can go to our website, fiatministrynetwork.tv/live, and you can pop into the chat room. We also would like to let you know that we do have a lot of things going on this year. We're excited about a couple series that we're working on. I'm hoping to have a little bit more shows throughout the day. We'll be hopefully popping on throughout the day, which I'm really excited about, getting more content out to everybody about the Catholic faith. I just want to, welcome everybody back, and we'll do a quick prayer, and then we'll welcome Matthew back onto the program. He was on just a couple months ago, and we were talking, fatherhood, faith, and then we, also with youth ministry. He is a Catholic speaker. Definitely go to, I'll pop up the website right now, CMG Booking, and I'll also show his profile on the website. I do want to thank cmgbooking.com for introducing, in a sense, Matthew and I to do this interview, the last couple interviews. So I definitely promote that, and definitely if you would like him to speak at your parish or organization or anything that you would like, definitely check it out. There's a huge bio on him, and a couple videos that he's done, and we have a video interview with us. So I just want to share that before anything. Again, cmgbooking.com. Check it out, and check out Matthew, and see if that would be a great opportunity to have him as a speaker. I'm going to do a quick prayer, and we will have Matthew on and talk about his journey over in Rome and working with the youth and his ministry. So in the name of the Father, and the Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, again, thank you for this new year. Thank you for coming as we were waiting for you in Advent, and now celebrating your birth during Christmas season. Thank you again for Matthew. Thank you for his family. Thank you for his time. Thank you for everyone watching live on our network and in our archive locations, all our social media. Bless them all, the family of the Fiat Ministry Network. Give us the words and the way you want us to praise you tonight as we just celebrate just a beautiful faith, and hopefully bringing the youth and fire them up, wanting to know you more and more every day. And thank you for our being husbands and being men of faith, and thank you for our wives and everyone that we share as our family and our children. Give them the graces that they need to grow in your love, and we just ask you for a great evening of just service to you. In your name we pray. In the name of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. And further ado, I will bring over Matthew. Matthew, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Kent. How are you?
Good. Just wanted to thank you again for coming back on. I know you had a really busy couple weeks, and you definitely traveled more than I did. I did Disney, but I think you went a little bit further. Offhand, Happy New Year, and just give us a little story of the background of how you got to go to Rome and everything of that nature, and please share what happened over there.
Well, first of all, it was just an amazing opportunity. It came up just about 3, 4, 5 weeks out from the summit being held, and I wasn't really aware of the event that was taking place there. And so there were some email solicitations that had gone out from CMG Booking to have me speak to parishes and schools and whatnot. And one of the recipients of the email had seen my profile and was just doing some reading about my ministry work and what I'd done in my past, and just felt that I was a really good fit for their summit. And it's a different type of, it's not really a conference. They called it a summit, and it had a little different intent than a conference normally would. And so the focus of this particular summit was to, it was invite only, and it was to get people of different backgrounds from different cultures, different language backgrounds as well, to come together and be witness to and share and be a part of Pope John Paul's vision for a new springtime. And so this is all centered around youth primarily, and just signs of this this resurgency of the Christian faith in the world. So it was a great opportunity. And again, it kind of came at a tough time. You're going into winter. Everyone's saving up money for Christmas and trying not to spend on other things, but I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to go and see what doors the Lord would open up for me there. And just really glad I went. So,
well, let me turn that off. I know it was during that time, but with the youth, and I know Saint John Paul II, and now it's Saint. The youth was so important to him, and I know that with World Youth Day, he with the different speakers and everything that you got to check out, what were some highlights or anything that you would see that caught your eye that maybe you could take back, and with your ministry work and with your upcoming any speaking engagements, future ones, what kind of gave you anything that really hit you really hard in the sense of, okay, I got to bring this back and share this?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. Every conference a person goes to, a summit where you're going to learn and hear new information potentially. You come back with so much, and sometimes it's just getting away from home and the environment where you're working all the time. You get away. I wouldn't say distractions, because my family's not a distraction, but those of us that travel and go to conferences know that when you're there, you're very displaced from your daily life, where there's lots of things going on, and a lot of things that kind of pull your mind and you're thinking in different directions. And so while I was there was absorbing all those things that I always look forward to. But the things I heard that were really interesting came from those folks that were from other countries outside the United States. Predominantly the largest representation there was the United States, but I'd say half the group was from other countries, mostly in Europe, and the other half was from the United States. And one thing in particular, the reoccurring thing I heard, which wasn't anything you don't hear in the States, but it was nice to know that other countries and other denominations, not just Catholic, are also struggling with this in other countries as well, is the youth. I mean, it's a problem everywhere. And I think the thing that so many people tend to agree, and it's not a blame thing, but just the effects that technology and especially social media have had on our kids. They're more connected to network and communicate, but it's not it's not helping them. It's actually causing more harm. And so there were lots of conversations about that, but it's a tool, and like any other tool, we have to choose to use it the right way, and we have to understand its strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's the thing that we've told kids about, but we really haven't helped them really learn and understand it. And there's a difference between telling and then letting a person really see and understand, and I know that as a teacher, you can sit and lecture all day long to kids, but eventually they have to be able to get their hands on things and apply their knowledge and understand how things work in the realm of what you're telling them, how it's supposed to function and work. So that was one thing. So I heard something that was sad, but also nice to know that we're not alone. So we were trying to kind of troubleshoot the same problem. But the second takeaway I had, there were the two biggest ones I came home with, and I've already shared them with the head priest at our parish as well, is that that the world was really watching the United States and not watching us like we're doing a bad job. They're struggling in their countries with their political corruptions just as much as we are. And a lot of the problems that most Americans are aware of, we're not really aware of what's going on in other countries other than what our news allows us to know, and it's pretty limited. And and you can even go as far as to say what their news will release to the world for us to know. So really where you hear some truth is when you actually meet people and ask them what's really going on where you live. And so that was really interesting, because what they said is that we see what's happening in your country, and we're really looking. For the first time, I heard foreigners from other countries telling us they were really rooting for us. They are counting on us because they're afraid if we fall and we lose with all these battles we're fighting here. And they were aware of what was going on in the NFL. They're aware of the legalization of marijuana in some of our states, and just a lot of things, the abortion issues. And so they said if we lose these battles, they're worried that the rest of the world will just fall like dominoes. And they feel like they're holding ground where they're at. And if we can somehow claim a victory, a model will be able to be presented to how other people can win those battles and victories in their country. And so I've never come home with such a sense of responsibility and kind of a weight on my shoulders of pressure to pursue my ministry work even harder and with even more passion, because of what I felt so many people are really counting on us, and we're counting on them too. It's not just them counting on us, but we're kind of center stage. Everything tends to kind of go here, and if we're kind of a big dog. If we fail and fall, then it's really tough for other people to have any kind of model of support. So
yeah, well, that's interesting that the whole process of the youth, and then also that it is a battle worldwide. It's not just here, and to understand that we are kind of fighting this world battle, even though it's just we kind of only see the United States or our own little community, but the faith and also teaching right from wrong, I mean, in any kind of realm is difficult. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, we're a religious ministry, but I think it comes full circle when you hear that these other countries are hearing the same stuff and are kind of, in the same boat that we are, and we just, we look like the powerhouse because we're the United States of America, and we are, the most wealthiest and all that down the list of things that you can list, but we might not be the most faithful, and our faith is very weak. We're not very, you can look at all these other numbers and stats and all that, but I see the faith as one of those things that, as much as we want to try, and I see this just as doing my side of ministry work, in the sense of the technology and how do we spread the word when these large, which are great, I'm using it right now. And I'm using two multi-billion dollar companies to do this, but we can't even spread the faith correctly and to spread the truth, because we are, kind of not on their side. And I think the youth get caught up in the technology, and I was the same way when, technology, internet was just coming out when I was, teenager, but there was always games and all video games and all that, but, faith was kind of secondary, to be honest with you, when I was a teenager. But I saw that, what happened to me when I was getting older, and then seeing what the kids, even a couple years younger than I, were doing. And I'm like, I got to do something. And I took 1 year of ministry, and I wasn't the best at it, but I felt that they needed to hear how to be fired up about their faith. And then I think that's probably around the globe, like you're saying. I mean, to take a journey to Rome and to hear all these different speakers, to hear basically them, hey, we're in the same boat. It's just, how do we focus our faith to our youth and not water it down? I get nervous when people want to try to water down the faith and make it what it's not, where, yeah, you can get some pizzas and you can bring in a youth, and all that, but don't water down to the kids. I don't think the kids want to be watered down to feel like they're, not important enough to share what's really out there, because it's as much of graces that we can get, there's also evils, and I think with technology there's always good and bad, and I think that's any movie. I mean, Star Wars just came out. There's good and evil. I know that's not the greatest, but I mean it's that kind of thing. I mean, there's good and evil in this world, and people kind of want to go find what's all good, but then we have to know that these kids are in a world that a lot of people hate, and people are getting killed because of their faith around this world that we don't really see in the United States, but in other countries it's happening, because you're talking about your faith, you could get punished for that. So I think, not to bring down the subject, but I think some people just don't want to hear the bad, and I think for the youth, you have to kind of balance it to that age group. But I mean, what ages were you seeing as the over there? I mean, was it just a huge range of youth groups, or what did you see over there? Like what was over there that were they more on the teenage side or young adults, or they were all over the spectrum of ages?
Well, the summit I was at was an adult only invite, so there weren't any youth there.
Okay.
So as far as the youth that you're kind of wondering about, I mean, I would say, I guess, for participants and speakers who were there going back to their native lands or countries they were from, predominantly the focus when we were concerned about youth was primarily centered around the preteen, the teen, and the post-teen years. So that kind of pre-confirmation, confirmation, post-confirmation age. That was where the biggest concern lied. It was with so it's can we get our kids to confirmation? Can we get them through confirmation? And then if we can, what percent of those are we keeping, and how do we keep a higher percent of them longer? And that's ultimately the problem that the church is facing with youth is, I can't tell you how many, I think we talked about this on the last show, how many people I've talked to just in my painting business, doing bids and talking to people. And I see a rosary in the house, and we'll just visit a little bit, and they'll tell me they can't get their kids to want to come to church. And I'm thinking at that age, there were times I didn't want to go to church, but there was never a fight with my mom or dad. It would have just been so disrespectful. And, it was about, it was 2 or 3 weeks before before Christmas. My son and I just gotten back from Rome, and we always plan the opening weekend of pheasant hunting season in Colorado. My son and I, we've done this since he was probably 7 years old. It's just something we both look forward to. It's a Father Sunday. It's great. It's a great weekend. And so we missed one of his confirmation classes that weekend. So they had a makeup, and the makeup was just simply watching a video that he missed in class, which it was a great video. But we were there, and there was another family. There was a mother and her son, and we were just chatting a little bit right after the makeup session was over. And I asked her, I said, is your son enjoying the confirmation class? She goes, no, he hates it. And he was sitting right there. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be a fun conversation. And so I said, really? And I looked at him and I said, how old are you? And, he told me I think he was in 7th grade. And I said, why do you hate coming? And he just kind of shrugged his shoulders. And I said, that's not really a very good answer when you tell your mom you don't want to come. And I said, do you know what a special gift it is to be here? I said, you know how many kids don't get a chance to be confirmed or don't know what confirmation is? And I said, I bet you know a few of the 10 Commandments, don't you? And he kind of looked up and nodded his head. And I said, do you know the one where it says, obey your mother and father? And I said, is your mom asking you to do anything bad? Is she asking you to sin by coming here? And he didn't answer. And I said, I know you know the answer is no. I said, then why are you being disobedient to your mom? I said, this is important, not just to her, but it's important to God, and it's important to our church that you're here and that you try to develop a relationship with Jesus. And I said, tell me one thing you like about being Catholic. And he couldn't even respond. And so I think some of, you mentioned a question before we came on the show here today about, what are methods and approaches to helping kids. And I want to get into that a little later, because there were some speakers that shared some very, very wise thoughts and some questions and some things for me and for me to pass along to people to help us do some internal reflecting as well on our own faith, and not just, focusing so much on where everyone else's faith is and isn't. But I definitely want to make sure that we keep coming back to this recurring theme of how do we approach, and how do we not necessarily help, but how do we show kids the importance and the value of having a relationship with Christ. It's, everybody, that wants to have a relationship with Christ wants to know how to have one. Well, just how about why it's important? And if it's important and you see the value in that, how you have a relationship with Christ just will come naturally, because Christ will guide you. But if you can't see that value and you don't understand the importance of it, then it's like anything else. Why should I get married? If you don't understand the value of marriage and the importance of marriage, well, then you're not going to get married. And how many people do we see doing that these days? Yep. We've completely devalued marriage. We've done that through same-sex marriages. We've done that through all sorts of things, through political legislation. And we've completely downgraded what God had intended for marriage to be. And I'm not coming down on anybody if there are people listening that get offended by that. But as religious people who are devoted to faith, we have to understand that we can't just turn religion into what we want it to be, so we don't have guilt and so that we don't have to accept sin. And that's, I think, what you were talking about with like watering down faith. There's this big concern that a lot of these new Christian, I wouldn't even say denominations, but these Christian groups that are popping up, they're Bible-based, not even churches, but just groups, if you will. And they're not doing anything wrong. It's great. I mean, they're having their faith is very simple. It's the Bible and having a relationship with Christ. And they don't have all the doctrines and all the traditions and things like we do in the Catholic Church and other churches have as well. But there's so many voids and gaps and lack of understanding of disciplines other than just the Bible and the relationship. And there's more than just those things in faith. Because if that's all it is, then that's all that would have ever been presented. And Jesus wouldn't have instituted a Eucharist at the Last Supper and all the things that he instituted during his time. I mean, he wanted certain things to be traditional so we would remember, and so that we would understand, and we would be able to pass these things on in very simple ways to our children. So, and through stories. I mean, that's what the Bible is. It's not just a story, but it's a beautiful book of stories to help us understand concepts that God wanted us to understand so we could live well. So, I mean, it's wonderful. And if it's okay, I'd like to just kind of shift into a little bit of the experience in Rome. And it's not to share a vacation, because people are like, oh, you got to go to Rome. Oh, it must have been so great. And I'm like, it was, but I was there to do work. I was there to do a mission. I wasn't there on a vacation. I had a little bit of time to see some things, and then things were built into some of the religious tours that you could perceive as vacation, but I was there to learn. I was there to let the Spirit grab me and guide me in the ways that I hoped and had prayed the Spirit would reach me, which is why I went and chose to go. It wasn't easy because I wanted to bring my wife, and she just felt uncomfortable having both of us gone and leaving our kids, because we hadn't left the country without them since things have gotten a little bit more complicated worldwide. And so, unfortunately, I went alone on this, and it was hard to see all these beautiful things, especially the religious ones, and not have my family there. So I've already started the process of slowly saving, but I'm hoping within the next 2 years, when my daughter graduates from high school, we can all take a family trip over and spend a few days, because they just need to see not just Rome and the Colosseum and all the other the other historical artifacts and things that are there. They need to just experience the spiritual aspects of Rome, because it's unbelievable. I've really been touched spiritually and religiously in several places in Spain, in Canada, and Montreal. Other places I've been in South America and Central America as well, but nothing like this. I mean, this was so special. I mean, every night before I went to bed, I'd wander back to St. Peter's Square, and it's open. You can just wander in. The police are there watching over. It's pitch black, but there's some lights, and it's fairly lit. And I'd just sit on a little marble step and enjoy some gelato I bought at a shop around the corner. And I would just sit there and just think to myself, this is just amazing. And it was quiet. It was calm. And I go there almost every night before I go to bed. And then I'd walk back to my hotel room and turn in for the evening. So, but just a beautiful place. So the summit I was at was an invite only, and it was focused around. I'm going to just kind of follow my bullet points here, so I don't want you to think I'm reading, but I want to make sure I have my information accurate as well. But it was focused around Pope John Paul's vision for a new springtime. So everything that we were doing there was about recognizing signs of this new springtime, and by that meaning this resurgency of the Christian faith, people coming back to the faith, people coming back and trying to network and collaborate and protect Christianity. And again, going back to the takeaways from the conference, the fact that everybody was struggling. Nobody said that our youth are doing fine, we don't have any issues, let us tell you what we're doing. Everyone was trying to figure out what to do. So what that told me in a very simple way is that what's going on globally really isn't just a war on terror or terrorists carrying out the things they're doing. It's a war on Christianity, and it's on all fronts. It's not just overseas, and it's not just ISIS going around and killing people that are claiming to be Christians and wanting to practice the faith. It's happening in our own country too, and people aren't being killed, but they're being slowly oppressed, and it's happening in a lot of countries. So there's different forms of attacks on the Christian faith, and it's an all-out war, and that's the war we're fighting. And so, and I'll get into some things later tonight about what I really am, and my focus as I speak to audiences live, not just here tonight, but also when I go out and do my live public speaking, is to get people to really see you have got to engage in this. If you're just going to sit back and keep watching the news and getting all the stories on the bad things that are happening and maybe the goods that come along, you're wasting your life away. This is not what God intended for you to be doing with the talents he blessed you with. Yeah, we got to make a living. Yes, we need to use our talents and work. And yes, we have to focus on things that are right in front of us and our families. But at the same time, we've got to multitask, and we've got to recognize this battle that's going on. And if we're not going to engage in it, then we're going to have nobody to complain when the day comes where we're completely enslaved, and we can't do anything about it. And our founding fathers went through it. Lots of people in history have gone through it. I mean, there's been tons and tons of stories of that. So that focus while we were at the conference was very powerful. The participant makeup, and I'm sure I'm missing a few countries as far as my representation here, so I do apologize. There were participants that were from the United States, from Canada, from Mexico, Ireland, England, Spain, Peru, and I'm trying to remember. There were I want to say I know Sweden was there, and I don't think Switzerland had representation there, but it was just a very dynamic group and so many different perspectives on how to approach strengthening our faith and then working with youth as well. So that was wonderful. If it's okay, can we jump to a few photos? I wanted to show
go ahead.
Just a few of the places we were and some of the things that I felt were significant to tonight's talk that kind of relate to this. So let me pull up hold on, I got to get to my share screen here.
Yep.
And give me a second.
Nope.
I think I'm going to choose the right one. Okay, so you should see, I got to back up, sorry.
Yep. Oh.
Everybody close their eyes. Okay, here we are. Beginning. So this was the first 4 photos I'm going to show you were pictures that were taken on my first religious tour. This was at St. John Lateran Basilica. And the gentleman that we had that was giving us our tour was a theology, I wouldn't say expert, but he pretty much was. He's been schooled very well over in Rome. He really knew the city, the history, but he knew the religious ties to everything. So for every place that you could go around Rome, there was something religious that he could add to it, which made it more than just a vacation like most people get when they come to Rome. They get little tidbits of the religious, but it's not in the biblical sense that as believers we would look and hope to have, and we were fortunate to get that on a couple of the tours. So this was the Basilica of St. John Lateran. This is the one of the, from what, and again, if my history is inaccurate, I do apologize. So if there's people out there listening that know this more than me, you might want to tune me out here for a little bit. But there was so much information I received so quick, and to make sure it's all accurate, I'm still going back and adjusting my notes a bit. But this was one of the first basilicas in Rome. There were more saints whose bones were buried up near the front of the altar of this church than any other basilica in Rome. It was beautiful. The statues, I don't know if you can follow my arrow at the top as I'm kind of scrolling. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So the statues up at the top are the disciples with Jesus in the center. And this was really interesting. I can't remember who the architects were that designed the building and the statues, but these statues are not proportional. And by proportional, what I mean is from head to toe, they're not proportional as all the other statues in Rome are, because these statues are located up high and we're looking at them from the ground at a certain height and at a certain angle. The architects actually had to rescale the proportions of each of the disciples and of Jesus's body so that it would look proportional to the eye from the ground looking up. And I thought that was just phenomenal. And so one of the biggest themes I kept hearing while I was in Rome was you talk about, kids out there looking for careers, and my daughter's one of them because she has an interest in art. Was they talked about how much art and architecture has brought people to faith, because Rome is so magnificent. It's because of the architects and the artists that designed it to be that way, that it just makes you sit there awestruck staring, and it just draws you in. And when you're of faith, I mean, it draws you in to the point where you don't want to leave. People that aren't of faith, it draws them in, but then they're ready to go on and go see the next thing, which I was too, but I would come back and just want to sit there and just be in the moment longer. And so you really got to grasp the magnitude of just how powerful a career and a talent such as art and architecture can be. And so those are two of the career professions that two of our children are interested in. And when I came back, I mean, right there was one of the most perfect reasons why I needed to go, and I didn't know until I got there. So, you just never quite know what's going to come out of taking an opportunity. So, beautiful basilica, gorgeous head to toe. I mean, just look how grand that is. You can see the kind of the overall size. And again, when you're there seeing this with your own eyes, it's so much more magnificent. I mean, as anybody knows, pictures just don't do the justice, but, it was magnificent. This is the inside, heading up to the main altar. Beautiful statues, 25, 28 foot tall marble statues of each of the disciples. And each of them are carrying a representation of not so much a weapon, but what was their talent that was a weapon. And so it was neat. And there was so much history that went with this, gold ceilings, just beautiful. I can only imagine how poor people must have been so that these basilicas could be built. But they must have been putting $100 and $200 bills in the baskets when they were passed around during mass or something. But just absolutely breathtaking. So this is up towards the front with the organ. Just beautiful. Just the detail. And that's the thing that grabs you, is you just don't see churches built like this anymore with so much detail. And, there were basilicas, and you see this a lot when you go to a lot of, the European cities. You'll go to, maybe Montreal, you get into the bigger inner cities. Denver has them, Chicago, Boston. You just see these, you see so many cathedrals, so many basilicas. And, you walk 2-3 blocks away and there's another one, doesn't look like much. You walk inside and it's just, your jaw drops again. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. This next, I'm going to jump back to that photo in just a minute. So I'm going to move forward and then come back to that. Yep. So these next couple photos are, this is the Church of St. Lawrence, and where inside are the very famous holy stairs, or the Scala Sancta, which are a set of 28 white marble stairs that are a Roman Catholic treasure. Long ago, the stairs were encased in wooden steps that led to the church. And the belief, and I don't want to say for Catholics and people that are of faith to say it's a belief, because I think it's more than that. But the information on it is that the belief is that the stairs were to have been brought to Rome from Jerusalem in around 326 by St. Helena, the mother of Constantine the Great, and are known as the stairs where Pilate had sentenced Jesus to be crucified. So the belief is these are the actual stairs that Jesus had to walk when he was sentenced to be crucified by Pilate. Wow. Again, 28 stairs. They're not marble, but because they're encased in wood, and the wood is so warped and worn from, you're not allowed to walk on it. You have to work your way up on your knees and pray. So it's almost like doing a rosary. It took us, that's not a very crowded day. They said that was a really good day. And it took me 50 minutes to pray slowly up the stairs, because you can't move until the person in front of you moves. It was quite an honor to do this. And it was the very first, actually that was the first day I was there. It was that evening. I just arrived in Rome that morning, and this was the first evening. So I was already just on the way to doing something very historical and just very unbelievable. So again, this is the outside of the church at night, because it was in the evening when we were there. This was beautiful as well. This was this next photo. This is the actual petrified remains of the pillar where Jesus was scourged and flogged. Again, this was brought over from Jerusalem by St. Helena. It's encased in glass. This was probably the most awesome sight I saw when I was there, and there were many of them. But just to stand in front of somewhere where you knew Jesus was first tortured, it just kind of brought you to your knees and made you really realize that you need to do everything in your power to serve God and be respectful of that sacrifice. Yep. But just amazing. This is kind of later on the trip, but I just wanted to put this in. So the next couple of photos are depicting every day at noon. crowds would just gather rapidly about half hour, 40 minutes before noon. They would gather in St. Peter's Square, and the whole square would just be full of people. I don't even know how many people can fit in the square, but it was unbelievable, almost a little scary. And they would come to hear and see Pope Francis and hear a brief message that he would give from the papal window here. He would appear in the window. He'd greet everybody with an opening prayer, give a brief talk. Unfortunately, it was in Italian, so I can't tell you what he said the day I was there. but I think it was really important, and it was interesting. And then he would conclude with a prayer that would extend over the audience, and it would include a blessing, which we were told that blessing was to also bless any of the rosaries and artifacts and things that you had bought out with the vendors that you were taking home as gifts or for giveaways to friends and family. So that was a really special event. It was just neat to see so many people from all over the world, and people who I'm guessing weren't Catholic as well. They're sharing part of our faith, and I think these are the things that help people be open to wanting to know more about what is it about being Catholic that people just really gravitate to this stuff. And a lot of people never get to experience this who are Catholic, but it was neat. So just got a couple more photos to kind of show you here. Yeah. This was a zoomed in photo with a camera from a very far away angle, and I had to keep snapping pictures because every time I took it, they were off centered. It was so zoomed in and so far away. So I took probably 20 pictures before I got a few that I liked, but it was pretty neat. So this is St. Peter's Square. This is wide, and I have let me see if I have here's a panoramic. This is one side of St. Peter's Square. So there's another arch on the opposite end. It was just massive, and these pillars are so big. They were probably 110, 120 feet tall, each of them. And it was, when you'd walk through here, you felt like you were just walking. You felt like you were in another universe. And I've traveled a lot and seen some amazing things that are incredibly old, thousands of years old. But the magnitude of what went on in this very square. I mean, Peter was beheaded here. There were several other disciples that were killed here. And then to think that Rome became a center point as a holy city, it's just crazy. I mean, this trip is still resonating with me. It's just really something. So again, this is St. Peter's Basilica. I was kind of, it's funny. I don't mean this to sound weird, but I was expecting something bigger when I got there. And I was like, oh, that's the Basilica. But when you go inside, it's so deceiving. What you can't see from here is these little tiny specks here are people. Wow. All along that's a walkway. There's people there taking pictures back at where I'm standing taking this photo. And so it's a little taller than it looks. It just didn't look as big because of everything around it that was so large. But when you get inside, it's just unbelievable how massive it was. And I'll show you some photos of that in just a minute. So this was the square at night. I had to put down my ice cream and it was melting quick, so I just took a quick picture. But this is where I would sit and I would just enjoy this for 15, 20 minutes by myself in silence. And then I would head back to my room to call it an evening. So this is inside the Basilica, and I'm not going to show a lot of pictures of this because I want to get back to our talk. But this is the very beginning of one of the masses, and it was really crazy. They had this, you could see all the people in front of me in the lower left of the picture. Mm-hmm. They're all standing there taking pictures. They had these huge wooden like gate fences that would go left and right all the way across the Basilica. And as for those people listening that have traveled to some of these very historical cathedrals around the world, you know that they're museums as well, and people come in during masses and are allowed to quietly and respectfully walk around and take pictures and things. So it's a very different feel as a Catholic to go to mass in one of the basilicas here, because in our masses people may walk around and stuff, but they're not there taking pictures and touring. It's just it's a really different feel. So in the basilica here, they had these barricades, if you will, these kind of gate/fences, pretty far back from the very back of where church would, the very front of the altar and where mass was being attended. You could see the people over here. this is the very back, and you'll see kind of the audience of the mass in just a moment. But the masses were so interesting there. As one mass was ending and there was a procession of people leaving and going out, up in the front there'd be an entrance of another one starting. Literally, as one was walking out, another one was coming in and beginning. And so there was like this odd transition between masses where there wasn't much of a delay of time. And that's very different because obviously we don't see that here in the States with our masses. So here's the front of the altar. This just gives you I'll back it up in a minute and show you another photo, but this is the front of the altar. These are altar servers, priests that are visiting. And then the cardinal, I'm not sure which cardinal was serving this particular mass here. This was the end of a mass I was taking pictures of, and then I stayed for the next mass that was after that on Saturday night. But look at the size of the people. It's about a 6-foot person, and then just start going up. And this is all gold. I mean, it was just magnificent. Let me see. I think the next picture shows a little bit more of the height. Yeah, there we go. Look at that.
Wow.
I mean, and this was throughout the entire basilica. I was doing estimates based on height because I run a paint business as well, and so I'm always estimating lengths and heights and everything.
Yeah.
And I estimated that we could put over 120 of our churches where I go to church into this basilica and probably still have some room.
Wow.
I mean, it was just magnificent. So just truly, truly beautiful. This is my final photo to show you. This was before I went to my second and final mass at St. Peter's Basilica. I was just walking in through security and turned around and saw the clouds, and the picture was just beautiful. Yeah. And so I just snapped it quick. But it was just an amazing experience. So much to see and learn. It's just, I was exhausted when I came home and I needed another vacation. It was pretty tiring. So anyway,
it's beautiful. That's a beautiful yeah.
I'll give you back your screen here.
Okay.
Thanks for letting me share.
No, thank you. Yep.
Okay. So I think from here, if it's okay, I'd like to share. Yeah. I'd like to share some things that I felt were presented and talked about at the conference that I think the viewers would be interested in hearing. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of wonderful speakers, and I didn't take the liberty of mentioning and getting all their names prepared to present tonight. Every person that came up did a wonderful job giving testimony, sharing how they came to faith in their life, things that they've overcome, trials and tribulations. It was neat. Everybody had a different story, came from a different background, came from a different perspective, and it was just refreshing to hear. But there were some in particular that really I felt were challenging in such a great way, and I wanted to share them. The first is the first of the two I'd like to share a little bit about tonight, and he's probably the highlight of what I want to share. Was a gentleman by the name of Bishop Brian Farrell, and I'm just going to use my notes so I have this accurate. So I apologize if viewers sense me kind of reading on script here. But he was the last bishop ordained by at the time Pope John Paul II. He was from Ireland. He's an Irish priest, and he had a great sense of humor, as most of the Irish do. He spoke of the ecumenical movement in the world today. Very specifically talked about things that are having an impact on this change. And he did a really great job of kind of taking us back in time historically and explaining some of the history of religious movements. So from divisions within the church due to abuses, and obviously with Martin Luther starting the Lutheran Church, churches warring with one another. And he referenced and got into details about Protestants versus Catholics, Catholics versus Lutherans, then Christians versus Jews. But the premise of all this history that he felt was so important to understand was that history can't be changed, but how we remember it can be. And, when you hear that statement, you can start to process it in a lot of different ways. And for me, and this is my own perspective, so I don't expect it to be anybody else's, but for me personally, I really started thinking about the United States. And again, I'm not blaming our previous president. I'm not blaming any one person, but I am stating a fact in stating that what the bishop said, and I'm going to repeat it: history cannot be changed, but how we remember it can. We see an effort that's going on with our current presidency, and there's an effort to stop it, and then there's an effort to prevent those stopping it from preventing this event to take place, and that's to remove our history. And whether we like it or not, there's a lot of bad things that are part of our history. And I'm referring to the Confederate statues coming down. That was a case in point, and that was actually brought up. And some of the folks from the other countries that were saying, we're really watching to see how you guys handle these issues in your country. That was one of the issues that they brought up. That's erasing our history. And I'm not saying that there aren't things about some of these people in history that weren't pleasant, but it was part of an event that was a struggle that was overcome, and it's something that made our country great. And I don't know. I don't want to get too opinionated on these things, and I'm not trying to use the statues because I was really, upset and torn about it. But I've seen that similar type of thing done in so many ways in the past. From, just take your hometowns where I'm talking to viewers here. Take your hometowns where you grew up. Have you ever come back from, living, you live somewhere else, you come back home, and you're excited to go back and see some things that really meant something to you and your kid, and they're gone. Obviously we can't keep everything around so that your memories stay intact, but we're talking important things that lots and lots and lots of people have as a memory. And the town knows that people have that as a memory, and then they just tear it to the ground and bulldoze it, and they build something new over it, and it's gone. That's how you erase history. You erase history in education by not exposing kids to truth, by telling them the verdict's in a science debate on global warming, and they should just accept that it's because of man-made events. We go on and on about how you erase history. You can't erase it, but you can change how it's remembered, and you can make it go away very quickly with the internet. So that's something that really resonated with me. He also went on to say that history is the burden that we carry, but then he explained that he felt we can change the way we view the controversies so we can find the truths that help us agree and not disagree. And that was mentioned so many times by so many different people about finding avenues to reach people. Is the easiest way is to find common ground and not focus so much on our differences, but focus on what we have in common. And it's hard to do today. So, if we're trying to find common ground with someone who's not seeking it as we are, then truth is tough because one person just doesn't want to see it or doesn't want to know it. And that's, I think, where we find a lot of our struggles in the States here today, is that one side, and I'm not insinuating what that one side is, but one side of the argument just doesn't want to find common ground. And, in a marriage, in a friendship, if the other side just doesn't want to find common ground, tell me how well that works out.
Right.
It just doesn't. And you just have to pray that God speaks to them and opens their heart so that you can at least get that openness first, and then maybe that common ground that can start the process of building in unity, because it's the only way that you can work with other people to get those things done. So it's very difficult. Bishop Farrell also talked about the need for us all to have a daily examination of conscience. This was something he was very adamant, very passionate about. And his biggest thing is that he just sees so many people focused on examining others before themselves. And I think a lot of that is spun from media too. We get a lot of that. When you turn on the news, you're not really reflecting on yourself. You're observing the actions of other people, both good and bad. And, most of what media is presenting is kind of negative. So what are we naturally being conditioned to do? Kind of look at other people and judge. And that's why turning news off is good, and then focusing on this examination of ourselves more than we spend time watching TV or doing other observances of things that cause us to judge and look at other people's wrongs rather than, pulling out that thorn in our own eye. So I thought that was a really, really good point that he brought up in his talk. There was another critical point he brought up, and a question that many churches, not just Catholic, are wrestling around with at this time, is how do we keep our youth in our churches? And so it's probably a good point to kind of break here for just a moment, and talk a little bit about some of these things, because there isn't one answer. There's not one solution, but there are lots of experiences people have had that lead them to believe why people have left our church, why we're not keeping youth in our church. And I think it comes right back to what I just had shared about Bishop Farrell. If we just examine ourselves instead of trying to fix everybody else, because that's ultimately, I think, the problem and I'm to blame here too, because I've been trying to come up with solutions to this problem with the church, with the folks I've been working with. And at the end of the day, it's like fixing somebody in your families if they have a drinking problem. It's like, how do you fix that? That's their problem to fix. Yep. What is really your job in the problem fixing part of their problem? It's to be a good support and be a good example. And if you're around them, don't drink. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Be a strength for them to know it's possible, so that when they're ready to make that leap, and they know they have, one, your support, and two, that you're strong and you can do it, and they can lean on you, rather than you're drinking and you're going to be able to pull them right back into that black hole. So if we take alcoholism as an example, a perfect example, and now just apply it to this problem, because it's a dysfunction. It's destroying our kids. It's it's worse than alcohol, in my opinion. We're trying to fix them. We're trying to create programs and lure them back. What if we just live our lives with more passion and show kids how strong our relationship with Christ is, and not be afraid to vocalize it and share it and talk about it, and just do it in the morning, do it when we come home, do it when our kids are around, do it in the car, do it on the way to church, but not to the point where you're driving the kids nuts and they don't ever want to hear another story again. But in a way that's so passionate and so intentful that they see you living this life, and then they see your life being good, and they see the good things that God's going to bring your way, because he will, because you're honoring him, okay? And then they put two and two together and go, whoa, A plus B equals C. I want some of C. Mm-hmm. How do I get some of C? Maybe I'll try it on.
Right.
And it's not going to take God long to give them those results and let them feel that. So,
well, I remember coming back into the church, and one of the things that I was always timid, and I'm not a good singer in the first place, but to feel comfortable singing in front of, just singing a hymn or anything that is going on in church, God doesn't care how you sound. And to sing, and your kids love to sing. I know my kids love to sing. A lot of kids love to sing. And to see daddy sing and church, I mean, this is just a very small example. I think the alcohol is a much better analogy or way of talking. But I always come back to hearing, when I was, coming back into the church, just a simple thing of singing out loud, or just, it's a prayer in praise and in song. And why not? It doesn't matter how you sound. Everybody else is doing it. And for your kids to see daddy sing, that is a very terrible singer, it says, okay, let me know why are you doing this, and ask questions, and onward and onward. But it's a great point what you're saying too. But I just wanted to add my 2 cents. But I'll go ahead, Matthew.
It's spot on too, and you're absolutely right. That's one of the best ways we can evangelize while we're in church is to sing and let God hear it. And I was kind of bashful singing. You always, I think when you sing, you feel like everybody around you can hear you, and that's why a lot of people are kind of shy and bashful to sing. And then, of course, every once in a while you get that person that sits in front of you, behind you, that, should be like in an opera choir. That's amazing.
Exactly.
It's like, why should I sing? Their voice is
You're so right.
Anyway.
You're so right on that.
But I remember one time, my mom sang in the choir, so I had the beautiful opportunity and blessing as a young boy to sit in the back of an old cathedral with a beautiful old organ. And the organist there, Rex Towns, I'll never forget him. He could just jam on that thing. And at the end of Mass, when everyone was exiting and leaving, he would just go to town and play his, I don't even know what they call it, but he would do his little entrance end of Mass jam. And it was just unbelievable. Listen to the organ just go. I mean, it was just a beautiful, beautiful instrument. But I remember sitting in the pews later down the road with my father. And I can't remember, I was older, and I'm trying to remember if my mom had stopped singing. I remember she had gotten some laryngitis and had to stop singing for a while, and it might have been during that time. But anyway, we were in the back of church, and I wasn't singing, and my dad leaned over and he said, "The Lord wants you to hear you sing." And I just remember him just saying that. He didn't force me, but I remember him saying that, and I was so about pleasing God more than my parents ever knew that I felt ashamed, and I started singing. And I don't think I've ever really missed a song since. And so, now I have an opportunity to talk to my son because he's struggling singing right now. It's the teen years, everyone's like,
exactly.
Yeah, there's a cute girl over there. I do not want to have her here sing. It's it's bad enough my hair won't go in the right spot this morning. So anyway, it's pretty funny. But I've kept telling him, I'm like, Nathan, the Lord wants to hear you sing. He doesn't care that you sing good or bad. He gave you a voice. I said, be careful. He might turn you into Zachariah for a while and make you mute. So, but, he's doing so much better. And I'm so proud of him. And every time I see him singing, I'll lean over and give him a squeeze. And I know he's like, Dad, stop it. I'm singing. Just leave me alone. But you're so right on that. That's so important. So some of the things that were kind of tossed around the conference, and some things I personally tend to agree with on, why youth are leaving our church. There's a lot of times young people, and I've asked them, they tend to feel forced to be Catholic and to go to church, which I can understand where they're coming from. Excuse me. Grab a shot of water here.
Yeah.
I can kind of understand where they're coming from. There were times when I didn't feel like church was a choice, but I didn't feel like it was a torture either. And so, I know they're kind of battling because there's a resistance that's targeting them where, if it was existent when I was young, I was kind of oblivious to it. I know some of my friends struggled going to church too. So it's not just a thing of the now, it's been a thing of the past as well. But again, I think it comes back to modeling. You don't want to come down so hard on your kids that they start to resent you and then they completely pull away, or they're obedient until they're 18, they're out of the house, and they never want to see a Catholic church again. I mean, there's so much damage we can cause by force, and that's not the way to make a long-lasting effect if we're looking at faith. But I think the modeling is a big piece of that. I think if kids really see us coming to church and enjoying it, sharing it, living it for the most part Monday through Saturday and not just Sunday, then they don't see it as hypocritical and they see it as something that has value. So I think going back to Bishop Farrell again, the examination of conscience, are we living our Christian faith properly in front of our kids outside of church? Because if we're not, they see that as hypocritical. And I think that was a lot of the damage that some of the Catholic Church caused through the Catholic education system of the past, is that there was so much damage from some of the priests and nuns and some of the, and I'm not saying all Catholic church schools, but I know in particular the town I grew up in, there was a lot of damage to the students who were, a lot of them were my friends, and they pushed away from church for so long and so hard, and yet their parents put all this money in their Catholic education. I mean, what a crime. That should never be happening if it's being presented properly. And so the presentation of what we say and what we do has to be consistent, and it has to be as Christian as possible. Otherwise, kids see it as hypocritical, and they won't support it once they get to an age where they have the confidence to push away from it. So that's important. Some youth, I think, just don't feel connected, and they don't maybe feel welcomed. I think that's a problem. I think the Catholic Church is aware of, and they've done a great job working at improving that. And that's a multifaceted issue, because it to feel an active part of a church rather than simply a participant means that the culture of the church has to be very open and accepting and honest about how they go about making the culture inviting. And just being friendly and polite and inviting verbally doesn't mean you're really inviting. And people that have had rough experiences trying to volunteer and get involved in churches know what I'm referring to and talking about. And there needs to be a consistent effort and an awareness across the board at the damaging impact that's having, not just on youth, but on adults, especially adults that are coming back to faith that have had long absences, because they're coming back. And I mean, I haven't heard it from tons of people, but I've heard it from enough individuals. I feel it's important enough that I share it at times when I'm talking to people, because it is important. And we've got to remember, we're not just trying to keep our youth, we're trying to welcome people that are trying to find themselves and come back to the faith as well. So that's an important one.
Yep.
And then the last kind of tidbit on that topic again was having faith and enjoy church, and then so sorry, I kind of blotched up my notes a little bit. I was like kind of going, what in the world was this?
Wow.
It was the type of youth who and I've heard this a lot lately. I've asked young people in like their late 20s, early 30s, early mid 30s, and even into the early 40s that aren't practicing but were raised Catholic. And not all, but a very large percentage of them enjoyed going to church. They, went through the normal activeness in church that most youth have, going to classes for sacraments and maybe a few involvements here or there. But then their parents went through a divorce, and that was it. It just, one of the parents didn't maybe support the faith the way the other one did, and then there was a division, and then why do I need to go? And pretty soon they're just not involved anymore. And I saw this a lot as a teacher too. A lot of the students I had that had come from divorced families, I'd ask them at times, do you have a faith? Do you go to a higher power when you're struggling? Because, they were having issues and problems. And I said, you can't always go to people. People sometimes aren't your best sources of advice and guidance through your struggles. And a lot of these kids, they weren't practicing anymore or hadn't practiced at all. And so I think that's a real important one too. And that kind of comes back to our last talk when I was on your show about family and protecting family. And this is why it's so important, the role that a father and the role that a mother and the role of marriage has in this issue we're talking about with children. It's not hard to see why kids are struggling so much. I mean, relationships are struggling so much. And until we start figuring out and fixing our relationships, our youth are going to continue to struggle, because there's a hole and a void, and it's just not being filled properly. And how do you fill that void for kids? I mean, it takes a very special young person to be able to move past that and not have that damage scar them so bad that there's a dysfunction in their life. And every once in a while you run into someone and you'd never know the life they came from when they finally tell you, because it shocks you just based on how they're living their life and how things have turned out. But that's not the case for a lot of people. So I think the responsibility we need to have in our role as fathers and our role in our marriages it's critical. It's critical more now than ever. If we don't do everything possible to have the discipline to armor and protect ourselves personally from attacks as well as our family, we're just letting this problem evolve. So.
Yeah, and just I don't want to intrude too much, but I just talking about the family and being a father figure and a parent. It was funny for Christmas Eve Mass. We our two oldest girls did the reenactment of the Nativity, and the deacon was doing the homily that evening and was basically thanking the parents, because as much as we can do here, he was talking about the church and doing PSR or CCD, whatever you want to call it, religious education for children. He was pointing out to all of us as parents, everybody that was a parent in the area or grandparents, thanking us for, coming and continuing to teach the faith, and hopefully saying, we hope, it starts in the home. The faith starts in the home. They have a foundation there. We kind of give the little bit more in depth, or can fill in what we don't know as parents. I mean, just theology questions and all that, but it starts in the home, in the household, that we as parents have to teach our youth, our children, the faith, and hopefully they get excited about it. I mean, as much as as much as any PSR teacher, religious ed, all that, as fathers, we have a huge responsibility for our children, and just in the sense of our primary ministry here. I mean, we have different ministries. I know you're. I mean, the amount of stuff that you probably are. In 2018, I'm excited here at Fiat, but our main ministries are at home, and I just thought that was kind of a powerful thing, even though he started, at the beginning joking around about it, but he really focused, saying, thank you, pointing out to us. And I said, okay, I have a huge job. You take it for granted, I honestly, but anyway, so I think, that's another thing, because I think, people are, you got to welcome people. I think the points I'm going through your notes right now as you're speaking, and I really, it's amazing what you've got, the knowledge, I mean, and we just have to bring it to action, I guess. Sometimes we just don't, and then I'm glad, personally, I would like to, I do appreciate the notes. I'm going to take this to heart too, through my family, but continue. I just wanted to add that to the conversation, but I just thought that was kind of, the household is the most important place to build the youth in the faith as
It is.
family.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up too, Kent, because one of the things that I'm getting ready to go out and do a talk out in Fresno and Visalia here in February, and I just had called and spoken to my points of contact that have invited me to come out and speak, and just kind of asked them. It's a business club, so there's men and women that are in this Catholic network, and they're all businessmen and women, and they come from a wide variety, from farmers all the way across to insurance salesmen and medical device, everything. And so I'm hitting a pretty broad spectrum of business, but a lot of them are business owners, and they do a lot of, from what I understand, from what he told me, they do a lot of donating, and they do a lot of charitable work with what they do. I'm assuming a form of tithing, that they come together and they go support and help groups. And I'm anxious to meet some of them when I'm there, and get to kind of hear a little bit more about what they do personally in their businesses, as well as what they do as a group as far as funneling networks. But the message he kind of asked me to share is to give them something that can help them on a daily basis in their faith. And I think you just hit it, and that's exactly one of the things I want to talk about when I'm there, is what we do at home. Traditionally, Catholics didn't teach Catholicism much at home. I mean, you learned prayers, you learned a lot of the traditional aspects of being Catholic, but you didn't learn the relational part, how to have a relationship with Jesus. And really, it's just getting close to, instead of trying to understand some of these mysteries that were networked into the Bible. Like, as a quick example, last Sunday's gospel was about the presentation of Jesus in the temple. It's the fourth joyful mystery if you're praying the joyful mysteries and praying the rosary. And it's a beautiful story of how Mary and Joseph come and present Jesus at the temple. They meet the ancient Simeon there. He hasn't been allowed to die, and God told him he wouldn't die until he saw the Savior, and he knew the minute he saw Jesus, he was the Savior, and so he was excited and happy. But he also and and Mary and Joseph were so blown away with all he knew about this child, and they just brought him in to be presented. All of a sudden, they know everything about their child. It's probably a little spooky. Like, who's talking to my kid?
Yeah.
But they were so amazed by how much he knew about them. But at the same token, he shared with Mary that he was going to divide a nation. He was going to divide people, and then there would be, her heart would be pierced, and then she knew there was going to be suffering that was coming with his son as he grew older. So we heard the gospel at church that night at the dinner table. I read it again. We talked about it a little bit throughout the week because our kids have been on break and I've been off of work, enjoying time with them. I bring it up again. I'd ask them, what do you think it was like to have been the priest, knowing that he was gifted with not being allowed to die and he would live beyond everyone else's age until he saw the Savior, and then you would just know the minute he was presented because you'd see it in his eyes. I'm like, how special do you think that was? We talk about those kind of things, and I just kind of let the kids tell me how special they thought it was rather than me telling them how special it was. So I'm kind of letting them own that moment of that mystery and trying to dig into that and feel it, not just hear it, or maybe know the words are being said at mass, but they were kind of going in one ear out the other, like it does a lot of times when people are at church. There's just lots of, I think, creative, innovative ways we can engage our kids, but just to ask them what they think and how they feel. And the younger they are, that you kind of put them on the spot sometimes, and they're like, so you let the older ones go first, and then if they don't have something to say, they can kind of repeat what the older ones say, but they're still participating. They know their voice matters. They know they have an opinion, and it makes them feel valued and confident. And that's part, I think, of what kids struggle with that don't come to church too. They're struggling with confidence and feeling good about themselves too.
I know it's probably been told a lot of times, but I love what you just said about, letting the oldest go and having all that value for all the children from the oldest to the youngest. And I see that with we're at 6 and 5 and 2, so the conversations with the 2-year-old is slim to none. But the 6 and 5, I love just that concept of letting the oldest talk, and sometimes I think we push too much pressure on the kids to say something, but whatever they're I'm really interested to do that, just to see what my oldest does, and then my second oldest, and how the girls will interact with us. I'm going to try that. I'm going to take that because I do it for other things, but we don't really, faith is prayer. And I think we should, I think the ages don't matter. I think it doesn't really matter is how I'm, hearing this, tonight. And, but continue. Sorry.
You're right. And I tell you, one of the times I enjoy, there's 2 times I enjoy talking about scripture the most. When I know I have about a 40 to 45 minute drive alone in the car with one of my kids with me. This morning, I went up to shoot some clay pigeons in preparation to do some pheasant hunting tomorrow. And my son was with me, and he brought along one of his books he's reading, and he goes, "Dad, can I read?" I'm like, "Sure, you can read. I'm not gonna tell you can't read." I said, "But it's just you and I in the car." I said, "Why don't we talk?" And he looked embarrassed, but he's just so into this book. He's just trying to barrel through this thing. And I said, "I got another book we can read that'll really bring some good conversation." And I brought in a book along that I have that it's 33. It's a consecration to Mary. It's 33-day retreat. It's a personal retreat. It's in a lot of the Catholic. I think I referenced it the last show. It's a great book. And in the we were reading about Mother Teresa and about what happened to her after she answered her call within a call, and it was the dreams she had and all these people. She was in this very dark place with her work, and she didn't think she could do it anymore. And then she had a dream, and Mary came to her in that dream and was standing next to her, supporting her. She was seeing Jesus dying on the cross, and she was seeing all these people in front of Jesus, crying and sad and sorrowful and oppressed, and they were poor and they were young. And so the message to her was that this was what God wanted her to do, was to help the poor and oppressed and help the youth. And so that was her mission. But what Mary was doing was she was sharing part of her heart being pierced that the priest had told her was going to happen. She was sharing that misery, which in a really weird way, we don't consider people sharing their misery with us as a blessing, because most of the time, what do we do? We avoid it. You know, it's like, I don't want to hear your drama. I don't want to hear what I mean, it becomes too much sometimes. But here it was a blessing, and it took her visiting Teresa to explain that to her. And then, you know, according to what the passage said, and of course this was what she had shared in dialogue and writing some of the text that she had written and left behind of her experience, was that every day she woke up, she looked forward to seeing this pain versus dreading seeing it because it was causing her so much distress. So, I mean, to have that kind of insight is so powerful. And then, you know, you start looking at your life and all the places where, you know, you turn and it makes you depressed and you want to look away. Now God's asking you to look at it, but he's not just telling you to look at it. He's telling you to look at it, but then to do something about it. I gave you talents, use them, help these people like I've helped you, so you don't have this stress. You know, do something. And that was what I kind of told my son today. And so it was so funny. You know, he's the one that wants to be the architect. My daughter wants to be the artist. And so I said, so what is it, according to this story, do you think God might be leaning you to right now? And he jumped way ahead. I was thinking he was going to talk about baseball or school and things going on like in the present. Yeah. He goes, well, when I'm an architect, I could build schools and build homes for the poor and for the youth. So he just blew me out of the water with that. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Like, man, I wasn't even thinking that far down the road. And so he really wants to be an architect, but now he's starting to think about, how can I serve God with this talent before I even really have it? And so that's kind of that vocational piece that I think is helping kids to see how to live their faith and start thinking about it earlier, rather than waiting and getting into a career and then trying to figure it out then. But you know, we love sharing these Bible stories in front of the fire over dessert. As soon as my family gets back tonight, they're at the high school watching one of the sports events. We're going to sit down and have a little dessert. We'll go over to the fire. We don't do it every single night, because I don't want to act like we do, but we try to do it often. It's just a nice, peaceful time. You know, we enjoy some dessert together. We'll read a little scripture, have a little discussion, and let everyone just kind of share. And then we just kind of see where it evolves. And, you know, if people aren't in the mood to carry it out too far, we don't force it. We move on, we watch a show or do something and call it a night. But if it's there, we stay with it. And it's neat to see what happens. And just like you said, it's just neat to see what your kids come up with. You know, you never know what they're thinking until you give them a chance to really share it. Yep. And intentfully share it with a question that's very specific, rather than, how was your day? Good. What'd you do at school? Nothing. Are your grades true. Good? Yes. I mean, you know, we need a little more open dialogue. So anyway, but I know I want to be respectful of time, Kent, because I know we're coming up at about an hour and a half here. Yeah. What direction do you want to take with things
here? Here's my idea, and I know you're busy, but I would love, because there's a lot that we've seen, and I'm looking at. I'll throw them out after we end tonight's discussion. But if it would be possible to find another time to add another part to this, that would be excellent. I know your time and then your family will be coming back. I don't want to, but if you wanted to end with prayer and then hang on right after the ending credits, I would like to talk to you afterwards. But I do appreciate your invitation, asking, because I think we might have went back and forth, and then Christmas and everything, and I did want to have you back. So I really appreciate the insight, notes, everything that you've done, all the images that we got to see tonight, all the great discussion that we have. And I think we could probably, I know you're going to be busy coming up, but if we could schedule sometime down the road having you back on and continuing, because I think there's a lot to discuss still with what you basically studied and listened to, and I think we could definitely have another show. I would, if it's up to you, and we can discuss that after the show. But I want to thank you. If there's any final thoughts, I definitely want to let you have the final word and a final prayer. But I do appreciate the time tonight. It's been a wonderful hour and a half that went really fast because there was a lot that was meaningful, and I'm going to take to heart to my family. So I appreciate that. You do good work. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you. It's fun. I like being on, Kent. I appreciate you, reaching out and inviting me to be here and wanting to, hear about the experience in Rome. I guess the thing I'd like to just leave with, and this is kind of, for the audience and anyone that's listening now or listens to the archive later, I know Kent puts that on YouTube, and you can see that archive there. I'm not soliciting myself to get out and make money so much as I'm soliciting to get out and help, be a part of helping parishes that might be struggling. If you're in a parish that's just really, having some issues, it's struggling, just needs some help organizing, needs some fresh ideas, perspectives, whether it's coming in and sitting down and just spending time with like a youth group, youth leadership team, or even a parish leadership entity, or come in and speaking, or do a combinations of the both. I am at your disposal in service. I'm an incredibly busy guy, but I don't say that to ever deter somebody and think that, well, he's too busy, I want to respect his time. You're respecting my time by allowing me to come and help in any way possible that I can help. And if it's just to come and bring a positive, uplifting message for an hour or half an hour, to a retreat weekend, or if you have, confirmation groups that are doing retreats and you're looking for speakers and things, I am so interested in coming and traveling to see your parish and meet you and hear about, all the great things that you're doing that work, so I can bring some of this step back and share it with, our parish, as well as let you know some of the things that we're doing as well. And I have some interesting people, some priests and nuns that I work with that are just amazing, that I'd love to set up a time and get them involved as well, and get them on the show to share what they're doing out in their ministry work, both in the parish and around the diocese. And just, the more we network and share things that are working and things we're doing, I think it just really helps. But that's just, we have this, like you mentioned earlier, you have this beautiful piece of technology right here. We're using it, and yet Christianity is still struggling. We have all the means to communicate, and yet the world feels more isolated and cut off than ever before. We've got to fix that.
So true.
Anyway, but Ken, thanks again for having me on. I'll let you kind of close things up, but thank you to all the listeners. It's been great.
Oh, no, thank you. Matthew, if you want to close in prayer, the only final thing I want to say before the closing prayer, definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter. We are working on the website. I've been having some transfer issues in the last couple. I'm so glad that the website worked out for tonight. We are going to update it. We will have Matthew's show on the website. We do have other upcoming shows, and I believe Hugh Owen will be back next Thursday with his show. We will have information on the guests that he will have. I have a lot going on. We're really excited at Fiat Ministry Network with a lot of, and I know Matthew's very busy, but I definitely welcome him back anytime, and we can continue, because I think there's even more that he had. It's a great outline of information that we've even, we could discuss it even more in detail. So I really appreciate you, Matthew, for the time, a huge amount of time that you gave tonight, and we definitely respect that. So if you want to close in prayer, and we will let you, be with your family, and thank you again.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. In the name of the Father,
and Son,
the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Lord, thank you so much for bringing us together this evening, for those that took the time to listen and had the time to listen this evening, and those that will watch our show. Please use the Holy Spirit to reach each of us, and as Bishop Farrell asked, encourage us and help us to focus on ourselves and having a stronger and more consistent conscience of, examination of our conscience, and to help us to understand that our gifts that we've been given, both financial and talents, are not just to be used for our own benefit and for our own families, but for those that are less fortunate, the poor and the oppressed. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen. Matthew, thank you for your time. Everybody, thank you for watching, listening to our radio, and we'll be on iTunes also. Just thank you. We will be back next week for the Fiat Ministry Show. I might be on Tuesday. We're refocusing our scheduling, but we will let you know on our social media platforms when the shows will air. So I appreciate Matthew, especially I appreciate his family, and thank you for his time. So we will see you next week on the Fiat Ministry Show. God bless and have a good night.